Welcome back. Right now I'm making some homemade yogurt and I'm just trying to get back into those routines of things that I love to make for my family, because soon enough my husband and I are going to start working outside, and I'm trying to really enjoy my last bit of time indoors before that happens. And I've been doing quite a bit of thrifting lately, and I've had a little bit of success with my thrift hunts. And since doing my minimalism journey earlier in this year, I've really been picky about anything that I've been thrifting, and I've been really careful. But I've been thrifting some items for my spring wardrobe, which I'm going to share with you in next week's video. But I wanted to share with you a few things that I found lately that I found really inspiring. Earlier this year, I decluttered my favorite Victoria magazines from the 90s, and I made a vision board out of them. I cut through them, I made a vision board. I found a huge new stack of Victoria magazines from the 90s. Someone had to have been collecting these for literally years and kept them all of this time, which in and of itself is really special. But I found this huge collection of them, and I couldn't help but grab them because I think I paid 25 cents a piece for them. And one of the things that is so special about these magazines to me is that in the time period of these magazines, I would have been around 13 to 15 years old, and this was sort of my coming of age, and I was discovering who I was and what I loved. And to this day, I still love the things in these magazines. And so not only does it bring me back to that time period of being that girl, but I also still love the things in these magazines. And it's kind of Victorian woman meets 90s time period. But a lot of the things that are in here are still relevant today. They're still timeless and beautiful, and I just love them. You do need a little bit of a different eye to look through them, because the way that things are photographed now are a bit different. And so I feel like the photography and everything, the way that things are in here, are a little bit dated feeling. But once you kind of adjust your eye to it, you can really get into it. And so I just found this huge stack, and I'm so excited. And I've just been taking my time leisurely, going through these magazines and having a great time with it. And it's a really great way to get away from your phone or away from your computer and get away from technology and just get inspired in a different way. So that's one of my thrift finds. Super exciting. And I don't know, I might have to find a magazine rack. I see them all the time, and I feel like that would be a great way to display these. The other thing that I recently thrifted was this vintage enameled sort of dish pan. Well, it's a bowl, but I'm using it as a dish pan, replacing my old cheap plastic one that I was using. And to have this beautiful enameled one just makes me feel like I'm living in a different time period. I'm loving it, and I couldn't be happier. And when it comes to living more minimally but continuing to thrift, I feel like just replacing things that you already have that are useful with more beautiful versions of them is a way to keep going with your thrifting addiction, but not overdoing it and cluttering up your house. So I'm loving this. The only thing, I paid $15 for it. And I love that it has this hole here so I can hang it when it's not in use. And it's in pretty good condition, but there is one little spot on it that I'm kind of worried about. And so I'm thinking maybe putting clear nail polish on it or something to protect that spot, because I can kind of feel it. And I feel like having water in here a lot could make it start chipping. So that's the only thing, but I'm loving this thrift find. And then in the spirit of replacing things with more beautiful things, I found this beautiful sort of box. It's obviously not really vintage or antique, but it has that kind of look to it. And it has that kind of look that it feels like I would see something like this in a Victoria magazine. And right now I have some sewing and crafting stuff in here. And I think I'm going to use this as my new sewing box, because right now I'm just using a plastic sort of tote. And that's what I'm saying. Replacing things that you already have, but replacing them with something better is just a great way to still enjoy thrifting when you're trying to be more minimal. So I'm really loving these thrift finds for spring and just things to beautify my home. In a few weeks, my family and I are going back to the off-grid cabins that we went to in, I think it was November, just before Christmas. And we just had so much fun going there, and it's something we wanted to do for years. And it's something that I put on my vision board. And I've booked 2 more trips to the cabins, one in March and one in May. And it's at a place called Tin Poppy Retreat, which is only about a half an hour drive from where we live. So it's very close. We can bring our dogs. And we're all very, very excited about it. But I need to start planning food for this trip. food is just something that as a mom, you just never get to stop thinking about. And so I am going to be looking through some of my vintage cookbooks at some ideas, because they actually do have quite a bit of ideas for barbecuing, and I know that's something we want to do. And I also need to look just for ideas for dinner and breads, and I just want to come up with some ideas of things I can make, because it's something that I always have to think about. So it's a good idea to get inspired once in a while with this stuff. So we're going to be there for 3 nights, and that means 3 dinners. I'm thinking about hamburgers because there's going to be a barbecue there. I'm thinking about shish kebabs, and then I need one more dinner. So if you have any ideas, put them down in the comments for me. I'd really like to barbecue the whole time because I just feel like that would be easier. So maybe marinating some meat, just throwing it on there. I'm thinking baked potatoes in foil could be nice. There's also going to be an outdoor campfire. So this is what's on my mind. I was going to make cookies. I decided against it because my bowl for my mixture is being used right now for my yogurt. So I can't do anything that needs that. But I want to make something to make my family happy. And usually that means sweets. And so I think I'm going to make some Jell-O. That's always a crowd pleaser. And I make it so that it's kind of exciting, and it's a little bit of a light treat at the end of dinner that is not over the top. It's not full of too much calories. Yes, it's not great for you, but my family enjoys it. So that's what I'm going to make now. I've got these little mason jars, and this is what I use when I'm making little Jell-Os or puddings or anything like that. They just work perfectly, so I always keep these on hand. And this is just that kind of size that you would use for making jam. But they just work out perfectly. I've got my kettle going, so if it's noisy, that's why. But you know, I feel like Jell-O, I've had my oven cleaning this whole time. So I feel like Jell-O doesn't get enough credit because my mom made Jell-O all the time when I was growing up. It was sort of an after dinner dessert that was a regular occurrence. And it's something that I know people would put me down for using probably. But the reality is, I was thinking about this. When you go to the grocery store, there are so many horrible, horrible foods that are designed for our kids to eat when they go to school. And I was thinking about the fact that with all the health trends that have been happening, homemade cookies, homemade bars and treats, things that I see in my vintage cookbooks, they get a bad rap. But I feel like making a homemade cookie that would probably go bad if you didn't eat it within a week is probably a much healthier choice for your kids than a granola bar from the grocery store that will literally last for probably a year or two, maybe even more than that in your cupboards. The amount of preservatives that are in those foods, it's outrageous. And I feel like making some homemade things is not so bad. And something like Jell-O, it's not great. But you know, there are worse things. So I'm just going to enjoy it. It reminds me of my childhood, and I don't see why not. So for the orange Jell-O, I'm going to be using some mandarin oranges, and I'm going to put those in with the Jell-O. But the trick is that you want to wait until your Jell-O sets a little bit before you add the fruit. And I learned that from reading my vintage cookbooks. If you want the fruit to sort of evenly be in there and not just be sitting on the very top, that's how you do it. You let it set until it's still liquidy, but it's just starting to get partway there. Then you slip the fruit in. We've just got to let this dissolve now really well. And if you don't let it dissolve really well, there's going to be sort of a thick layer on the bottom. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. So we're going to let that dissolve really well. I let it sit for a good 5 minutes. And then I'm adding 2 cups of hot water. Then I'm adding 2 cups of cold water. But to that, I'm also using the juice from these mandarin oranges. And then if I had use of my mixing bowl, I'd make a whipped cream topping to go on the top. But because it's in use right now, I can't do that. So I'm going to make one with the orange Jell-O and the oranges. And then I've got a strawberry and a raspberry that I'll mix together. And then I'll use a fruit cocktail in that one. Always good, always delicious. You know, one thing I really do want to try is I want to try making Jell-O out of real fruit juice and just plain gelatin, which it's actually quite a bit more expensive just to buy the plain gelatin. And it would be a lot more expensive to buy good quality fruit juice, but I feel like it would just be so much better. And just the fact that there's so much food coloring in here and it's just ready to stain everything. That's the part of it that I don't really like. And I'm definitely going to give that a go and try that at some point. Because I feel like it's just going to be so much better. But at the same time, it's the price. That's what the problem is. Okay. So the next thing on my agenda this afternoon, my dad paid me to do a little bit of mending on his clothing. So I have a button that I need to fix on this shirt. And then on these pants, I just need to fix the hem on these because it's tacked down in spots, but it's not great. And when he's putting it on, his toes are kind of getting in there. So I just need to do that. It's a pretty easy fix. And it was so cute. I told him, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I can do it for you. But he slipped $20 into my purse. So I'm going to go spend it at the thrift store. Just adorable. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It was a pleasure hanging out with you. And I will see you in next week's video. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. I share videos every week on homemaking, food from scratch, and life on our farm. So take care and have a wonderful day.